Well, first, Donald Trump spoke for an hour and a half with Vladimir Putin. Then the American president spoke for an hour with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Now, to discuss the latest developments on Ukraine and what they could mean for achieving peace and security, I'm joined by Mark Toth, the national security and foreign policy expert. Thank you so much for being with us here this evening. Now, Mark, my first question to you here. Now, does this to you look like a potential breakthrough in the mediation process ahead? I mean, what signals are we getting from these talks that could actually indicate success or the opposite, failure?
Diana, thanks for having me. I think it's representative of a shift that, frankly, some of us missed. I think we thought there was some stages to come before we got to this point. We were all believing that Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg was going to be leading these negotiations with for the U.S. In Moscow before he went back to Trump, and to get these kind of statements that are coming, not just from him, but Secretary Pete Hegseth, who was at the NATO Ukraine contact group meeting earlier today. So it's somewhat surprising. I think it's too soon to know how fruitful they'll be. But at the same time, I think we also need to be careful that there seems to be a calculation that's changed here. Notably, in the Truth Social post that Trump did, Keith Kellogg's name was missing, and it was replaced by Steve Witkoff, who's Trump's Mideast envoy, and he's the one that just was in Moscow to get the release of the U.S. Citizen there. And so that's telling, because Keith Witkoff is more of an economic kind of guy, whereas Kellogg is more of a, comes from a military background. So it tells me the calculus, at least early on in this, is that Trump is looking at this as an economic kind of negotiation versus a military one. And I think that may be a potential mistake, but time will tell.
That was definitely one of my questions to you, is whether you think that this could lead to a new phase of negotiation, or was it actually Trump's sort of a part of geopolitical or broader strategy?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, Trump clearly, since he's taken office, come tomorrow, he'll be in office only 23 days, has really adopted a style of chaos. And we've seen that in multiple areas around the globe, be it his comments on Greenland, on Canada, on the Panama Canal, Gaza, and the like. And so some of this is just him trying to stay ahead of the curve so that the media, everyone else, can't catch up. And he may have been trying to catch Putin off guard as well. But certainly he's trying to drive the agenda. The days of the U.S. chasing the agenda are long gone. And what we're seeing now is a more assertive White House trying to control it. But again, it just remains to be seen if this is good strategy. We just don't know enough yet about what Trump is willing to concede here. I am concerned, I will say, though, at the outset, that it seems to be that there's a lot of concessions being made before these negotiations get deeper. And by that, I mean, for instance, suggesting that Ukraine is not going to be a member of NATO, I think is a mistake. To suggest that the U.S. wouldn't participate in any kind of peacekeeping force in a post-war Ukraine is a mistake. So those are the kind of things that I'm kind of puzzled by why Trump is taking this approach when he's giving Putin wins before they ever sit down together and talk.
I mean, I know that a lot of the details, I mean, like we heard our correspondent just earlier also brief us a little bit on that. He's in Kyiv. But what do you think? I mean, do we know, even though that it may be under wraps, a little bit more detail as what the likely outcomes of these conversations might be? I mean, what do you think both Putin and Zelenskyy are hoping to achieve, sort of speak?
Right. Yeah. We often talk, as I mentioned in TVP World yesterday, we often talk in military terms about setting conditions on the battlefield. And I think what you're seeing here on both sides is the attempt to set conditions for the negotiating table. If you're coming at it from Putin's standpoint, he seems, at the outset that he's got an opportunity here to get everything that he wasn't able to do so far on the battlefield in terms of getting parts of Ukraine, in terms of ceding territory, et cetera. If you're Trump, it looks like he's trying to get the conditions set so that he can bring an end to this war and get something out of it. But Ukraine has cards to play, too. And I think the conditions that we'll see
you said something Mark, you said something very interesting there. So what does he want out of it? What does Trump want out of this? I mean, we see what's going on with, the statements that he's made about Gaza in the past week. And so now if we focus on Ukraine here, what does he want out of this one? Another real estate deal or what?
Yeah, no, Trump thinks in terms of economics. You're right to stop and point this out. He views the $500 billion rare earth mineral deal, as your correspondent noted, and as you noted yourself, Scott Bessent, the U.S. Secretary, was there in Ukraine to negotiate that. So that's one thing that he wants out of it. He also wants the drain to stop in terms of, on a military side from the U.S., because he's surrounded by China hawks in his administration. They want to pivot. I'm just not sure this is the best way to pivot. But having said that, the one card that Ukraine can play still is its rare earth mineral thing. And so, Trump may be wanting to concede more than Ukraine is willing to give. And one of the things that Ukraine has leverage with is saying to Trump, all right, we've got $11.5 trillion worth of rare earth minerals. If you want that, our $500 billion is going to have to buy some kind of better U.S. security assistance than seemingly you're willing to offer at this point.
Thank you so much, Mark Toth, national security and foreign policy expert, for all your insight here on this breaking news this evening. Thanks so much for being with us here on TVP World.
Great. Always a pleasure, Diana. Thank you.